Okay, this part of the video is replacing the bearings. The inner bearing, you need to just offer it up into the sleeve and just press it with your fingers, and you'll be able to locate it enough for it to just sit there. The really important thing is that it's nice and square in the hole. To check you've got it square, put your finger on the edge of the bearing, go round the hole, and you can actually feel if it's at an angle or raised in one particular part. Okay, to refit the bearing we've got a proper tool, and you could manufacture something like this if you put your mind to it, but basically we've got a flange that fits onto a handle, and we can tap the handle and knock the flange onto the bearing and drift the bearing back into the bearing housing. And we'll just show you this in profile. Just move it around, and there's the handle bit, and it's just a flange that bolts on to the end. Okay, we've just checked that bearing now is seated fully backwards. A good way to check is from the back. From the back, if you go into the sleeve, just put your finger in there and you can tell that the bearing you've just knocked in place is fully located against the sleeve, so that is fitted correctly. Okay, with the bearing fully home, we now need to put an oil seal there. So move the oil seal up to the hole, and just with your fingers gently start to push it in. Okay, and you can see it won't go fully home with your fingers, but you can make a good start, and you have to work at it, but again try and keep it flush and square. Right, so you can see just with your fingers that's not a bad job. We need to finish it off now, and we'll show you how to do that. To tap home the oil seal, we're going to use a fairly long chisel, and we can use the blunt end of it, okay, so we don't damage the oil seal, and we can tap it home with a hammer, and that's what we're about to do now. Going side to side, top and bottom. Each time you tap it, it moves. Remember, it's not a bearing, it's not held like super glue, so you don't need to use a lot of force. You just need to get the seal in place. And once you're happy it's in place, if you use your finger around the outer circumference, you'll feel how flush it is. And if it's okay, job's done. If not, just a little bit of adjustment. And we're happy with that. So that's the inner drum bearing and the oil seal replaced on this Beko washer. We're going to go around the back and do the rear one now. Before we start to put the rear bearing in, it is a smaller bearing, so we've changed the size of the collar on our tool, and that's where we're going to put it. So again, like the front, we offer up the bearing, just using your fingers you can roughly get it just to accept into place. Once you've got it lined up, a couple of taps, and then just check to see if you're square. So if you're out of square, you can adjust it. If you're happy, keep tapping. And there we go, one bearing fitted. These bearings are an interference fit, and that means it's a tight fit, and you don't need any grease or lubricant to fit the bearing. It won't help at all, and you need the bearing to be firmly located in the sleeve, so that when the shaft is spinning within the bearing, you don't want the bearing moving as well, because you'll get some real bad noises from your machine. With all this banging we've been doing, you can see we've used a hammer with a short shaft on it. This is actually a 4-pound lump hammer, so it gives us a bit of clout when we're hitting things. Right, the final thing we're going to do is put some grease on the oil seal, and this grease is going to make contact with the shaft of your drum, and some bearings come with pre-greased, I should say some oil seals come pre-greased. This one doesn't, so we're going to put some on. This isn't ordinary grease, this is bearing grease. It is obtainable, and like I say, some oil seals come pre-greased up. The Beko ones tend not to. But it's not expensive just to buy yourself a little tube of grease. There you go, that's all ready for the inner drum. So with the bearings and the oil seal fitted, all greased up, we're ready to refit the inner drum. You'll probably remember from a previous video that we cleaned up the drum shaft. So it's a nice clean shaft going in a set of bearings. Here we go. You may have to just lower the drum slightly, the outer tub, so that you can get this in without damaging the fascia. Once it goes in, you can take the pressure off the top, and there you can see that's gone in. And if you listen quietly now, give it a good spin. No noise at all apart from me talking, but just give that one more. So that's how they should sound with new bearings, silent. Okay, once the drum's in place, the drum pulley can go back on and the bolt goes in the drum pulley. It's a spline shaft on this one, so it makes great contact. Okay, we need to tighten up the drum nut, so we put a shaft of a hammer in the spokes of the drum pulley, and then using the correct tool tighten up the star fitting, and the pulley will go against the shaft. That stops the drum and pulley moving and allows you to put some pressure on your tool. Once you've got it all tightened up, refit your belt, then go around the front, give it a real good spin, and if that belt wasn't fitted correctly, it'd be popping off now, and you can hear the bearings are silent, and all you can hear there is a bit of motor whine. We're about to refit the tub front, but before we do, we're replacing the tub front seal. This is good practice. The seal you take off may not be damaged, but putting a brand new one on means that when we refit this tub, we know it's not going to leak, and that's the important bit. Refitting the seal is just a bit tricky, but if you're careful when you take it off, the seal's got a flat edge on it. That flat edge should face upwards as you refit it. Just work your way around and put the seal in place. You could clean all the gunge off there at the same time and make sure that the seal fits nicely. Once the seal's fitted, just go around the circumference and just check it's all nicely in place. The last bit of the seal just takes... Okay, on the top of the tub front there's a locating peg, and obviously on the bottom of it is an element. When you go to refit it, the centre prongs of the element, you're going to locate those into a wire clip in the tub. You can actually feel it fitting into the wire clip when you do this, but the way to fit the seal, way to fit the front plate is as we show you just now. Okay, offer up the front plate, locate the element into the clip. Alright, you'll feel it go in. Once it's in, then you can square up the plate against the tub unit, and once it's in place, it'll start to hold itself. If you spin the inner drum, if you've missed the clip with the element, you'll hear the drum against the element. If it sounds quiet, you've got it in okay. Okay, tub front's in place. Reposition your clips and start to clip them in place. There's quite a few to refit, and work opposite yourself all the time. So then go back to the other side. Remember, we've got a brand new tub seal in here, yeah, so working side to side, offer up the clip and then just pull it forward into place and work your way around doing all the clips. There we go. Once all the clips are fitted, you may remember we had to remove concrete block to get at the bottom two clips to the left of the element. We're about to refit those blocks now. Okay, what we want to show you now is that we're going to refit the concrete weight, but it's held with a steel bolt going into plastic thread. So to enable the bolt to go into the existing thread, offer the bolt up and turn it the wrong way and it'll drop into place. That's it dropping into the existing thread, and then just start to tighten it up. We'll just show you that one more time. So offer the bolt up, turn it the wrong way till it drops into place, and then tighten it up. There we go. Refitting the concrete weight on your own is just a bit tricky, so just prepare first by getting your tools and your bolts handy. Offer up the weight and you can hold it with one hand, putting the screw in. Remember what we said about turning it backwards first, and it'll locate into the existing screw thread, and then a bit of jiggling with your hands, but it'll start to tighten up. And this is where you need your hands and your tools, everything available, because you've still got to hold this concrete weight in place. So quite possible to do it on your own. And that's one bolt in. The weight will hold itself in place, and we can put the other bolt in now. So once it's fitted, the weight is in place, 2 bolts in place. Okay, those nuts or the bolts are tight. They just won't tighten anymore. Needs to be tight. If this weight comes loose, you'll definitely know about it. It'll be so noisy on spin. Okay, with the weight fitted, we now need to refit the electrics to the element. There's a cable clamp, feed the wires through. Make sure you connect the earth to the earth. It's quite simple. Earth wire is green and yellow, and the other wires, there you go, and the thermistor plug into the thermistor, straightforward. And when it's done, it'll look like that, which is how it looked when you took it apart. And there's one more thing to do as well, and that's to refit the inlet water hose from the sump to the tub. Next job now is to refit the front tub of the machine, the front plate. For this we'll fold the door seal back in so it doesn't hinder us. So we've got the front of the washer plus the door to refit, and we'll get on with that now. Okay, we've connected up the door lock wire back into the door lock, and we're ready to fit the front plate. Remember those fastenings halfway down. Once it's in place, just lifts up and it should lock into place. Once you've got it located, put your 3 screws in on the bottom plate, and that just holds that front in place. We then need to refit the door and the door seal. Once the plate's in place, refit the door seal and just work your way around it. It's got a lip on it that goes over that lip on the edge. Dead easy to do this bit. The door seal's held on by a spring clamp. We've got a special tool for making the spring a lot bigger. I'll just zoom in on that for you, and it makes it dead easy, this special tool. But if it's fitted correctly, that door seal will not come off. Just the door to refit, and the captive nuts are held on this machine, not the same on all of them. Sometimes you can take these screws out the door hinge and the captive nuts fall in the back. On a Beko it's straightforward. So just offer your door back up, 2 screws to locate it and hold it in place. And finally, all back together, we just set it on a spin cycle, and it does this for a while before it starts spinning. And if you've heard a washing machine with the bearings going, that's what they sound like with brand new bearings in. So all in all, that's job done.